Welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I'm your host, Jeannie Hall, and I'm a creative inspiration coach who helps writers reignite their creative sparks. This podcast is here to help you knock down any barriers that stand between you and your dreams. You can do it. Join me. Hello, and welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. This is your host, Jeannie Hall, and this is episode 48, Hero's Journey. So you may already be familiar with the steps of Joseph Campbell's A Hero's Journey, but just in case you're not, here is the basic philosophy. In order for the hero to become a hero in writing, they must go through some period of struggle and some period of difficulty. And in fiction, we put our protagonists through some danger or some kind of dilemma. So in a romance, they would be lonely or heartbroken. In a mystery, there would be some sort of death or murder that our protagonist is going to have to help to solve. In an action adventure or thriller, they would get caught up in something that puts either their life or the life of someone they care about in peril. If it's a fantasy or a sci-fi story, usually supernatural elements will come into play that'll either help or harm the hero. In life, though, something similar happens. It's interesting just how similar truth and fiction tend to be. We all are born, and we grow, and we mature, and we die. But along the way, you'll usually find a great deal of drama. And that drama might include anything from an abusive childhood to a car accident, to a life-threatening illness, or a life-threatening injury. It could include heartache and bitterness, broken relationships, a loss of faith, living in destitution and poverty. But the thing about life is that which does not kill us tends to make us stronger. How many of us know someone who has fought cancer, for example, and won? Sometimes over and over. I know several people who have had that particular thing happen to them. One is an elderly gentleman that I used to work with, and he had, I want to say, 4 different bouts, different kinds of cancer that had affected him. And when I last saw him, he was in his 70s, and he had fought it again and won. And the way he looked at it was, I'm going to beat it. And there was no other question in his mind. That is how he saw things. And that is what happened every time. No matter what, he fought it and he beat it. And I really consider him an inspiration. I also have a friend who I knew before, and she's a very dear friend to this day, even though we don't live close together anymore, who had 2 different kinds, both of which can be life-threatening. And even though some surgery was involved, she beat them, both kinds, 2 different kinds. One was reproductive and one was lung cancer. She beat them both. And I think we all know how difficult it is to beat lung cancer. And she even did the right thing. She had quit smoking back when she was, I think, 40. And this was almost 20 years later that she still had lung cancer show up. And she told me it was because it ran in her family, which horrified me when she told me that she had lung cancer, because I never knew anyone who'd lived through that. But she did. So miracles happen every day, and we find our strength every single day. How many of us have heard of horrific stories of physical and mental abuse in someone, And after that person goes through it, usually later in their lives, once they heal, they go out and they help a lot of other people, sometimes thousands of other people later in their lives, because they know what it is to suffer. They can be empathetic and compassionate because they themselves have been through that very thing. So when they go to help someone else, they can totally sympathize and sit with them and hold their hand and say, I know exactly what this feels like. But if I beat it, you can too. And that's such an inspiration, right? Struggle is a part of our lives. It just is. But struggle is also what helps us to learn and to grow in our lives. It's ultimately what makes us who we are. And in our lives, we could have something else. We could have just like this one long, smooth ride. But we don't. Why do you think that is? If our lives were always that smooth ride, that carefree existence, do you think we would ever appreciate it enough to stop and stare at a beautiful flower or a glowing winter sunset? Do you think we would? If all we ever knew was this beautiful, peaceful, smooth existence? Or do you think we might take it for granted? I know a lot of us take things for granted even when we do have struggle. But who knows? Everybody's different. What do you think? No one in their right mind would ever ask for any kind of trouble or obstacle in their lives. But it is those very obstacles that show us what we're capable of. Would we remember to hug those that we love daily if we knew for a fact that no harm could ever befall either one of us? Or would we kind of just take for granted that, oh, they'll be there. It doesn't matter if we fight. It doesn't matter if I tell them that I hate them. Right? Nothing's ever going to happen, so I can be vicious in my argument with them and be hateful. And it doesn't matter. There's always time to go back and fix it. But in our lives, we don't know that. We don't know that there's ever going to be another time. That's why it's so important to mend those broken fences, right? Though many have lost their lives trying to climb Mount Everest, for example, people still go there on a regular basis to try it themselves. Why is that? Why do we want to climb those mountains in the distance? There's something inside of us, right? This impetus inside of us that makes us want to do new things, that makes us want to grow and achieve more in life. Why do you think that is? Though people used to say that traveling in space was impossible, of course we went anyway, right? In the 60s, we landed on the moon. And it shouldn't have been possible, especially with that technology back then. It couldn't, I don't know if you've ever watched the movie Apollo 13, but the technology was laughable compared to what we have now. Literally, they were looking at amps, like what would run a coffee maker was all that they had to run that space rocket into space and land on the moon. That's the kind of technology they were dealing with, and yet they still managed to accomplish this incredible feat. And now we have Elon Musk and his SpaceX program, and we're doing it again. And now the goals are even more astronomical, literally, right? He's going out and trying to get to Mars. He's got all these big plans. And one thing about Elon Musk, when he has a plan, he tends to succeed, right? He made it on the first try, but ultimately, he gets what he's going after most of the time. And it's interesting because anytime a visionary has ever come into our history, Elon Musk being one of them, everyone always tells them as they go along that they're crazy and that what they're doing is impossible and that their plans are never going to work. And some visionaries will let that dissuade them. They'll let that stop them from achieving the goal that they really want to achieve. But not all of them. And Elon Musk is one of those visionaries. And I know every time I go to work, or many, many times on my daily commute, I will be driving along and see a fully electronic, long-range Tesla driving next to me. Fully electric, no gas, driving next to me. This beautiful, sleek electric vehicle that'll never need to go by the gas station to fill up, right? All you got to do is plug it in when you get home. It's a miracle. It really is. A miracle of technology. But there are many other people out there who can create those miracles. Elon Musk is not the only visionary out there. People used to say that women and minorities could never run their own successful businesses. And they had a multitude of reasons against it. But the number of successful women and minority-led businesses that we have today has grown exponentially, and it continues to grow. And the news, especially right now, is full of devastation and loss and suffering. It's full of economic failures and doom forecasts for the future. It's full of scandal. And let me just say, this is my recommendation. Of course, you can choose to follow it or not. But I say do yourself a favor and turn all that off. Because so many people cause themselves to suffer more by listening to these continually negative events. On and on and on. It's never ending. It's always been, ever since we've had news. That's all they report, right? The worst of humanity splattered across the screen all the time. And the thing is, there's so much good and beauty and success out there that never receives any media coverage at all. What about that woman who works out of her basement, and she writes around her job and her kids, and she ends up becoming a hugely successful best-selling writer? How come we never hear about her? How come we never hear about that guy who went from working weekends in his garage on this little invention of his and ends up changing all of our lives with computers, right? Becomes a multimillionaire and an icon in society. What about all those people who leave their corporate positions to build something much more meaningful and heart-centered in their lives, working for themselves? How come we don't hear about all of them? What about those who volunteer their time to help others? How often does the national news cover them? What about those who rally and stand outside in horrible weather or in fear to stand against injustice, who demand to be heard despite a corrupt political machine that is more harmful to its citizens than helpful? That might make the news. But even that tends to get covered up in favor of more negative stories. What about those who continue to do their best at work every day, even though they fear that their company could go bankrupt at any moment? That's brave too, right? That's heroic too. What about that person who pulls over to stop and helps someone with a flat tire? Or opens the door for someone with a wheelchair or walker or a stroller? What about that person who is always helpful in everything that they do? They do it not even thinking about it. They automatically help everyone they can. Heroism comes in many different shapes and sizes, and obstacles will show themselves along the way. What makes a difference is how you handle those obstacles. What makes a difference is whether or not you choose to be the hero of your own life. So whether you write about fictional heroes or have defeated your own personal adversity in life, the hero's journey is your journey. Pain and loss and difficulty will come, but we can always overcome it. How? By remembering who we are. We are spiritual beings made of light and love. Period. Full stop. As such, we have unlimited potential, unlimited resources, and unlimited wisdom. The answers all of us seek are available to us anytime if we're willing to seek them. All you need to do is look within yourself. So my supposition in this discussion is that we are all heroes on this journey together. There is no us and them. There is only an us. We are all equal, all divine, all part of a greater and completely benevolent whole. The more of us who remember this, the more of us who share this, the more of us who write about this, the better this planet will be. So, in whatever way you can, be a hero. What you do doesn't have to be big. It just has to be. It just has to exist at all. Show the world who you really are in as large or as small a way as you'd like. But show them. Show yourself who you really are. Overcome that fear and that adversity. Follow your dreams and support the dreams of others. Send out love with all your heart. That, my friends, is the real hero's journey. That is your journey. That is my journey. That is our journey together. So if you're having difficulty listening to the news, like I am, sometimes it reaches you even when you don't purposely watch it, listen to these words. We are all in this together. And we can overcome all this together as well. So if you'd like to comment, I'd love to hear your comments on this. And if you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, I'll have a link in the description as well. If you like the positive and life-affirming messages that I like to share, check out my Facebook page. It's facebook.com/writinginyourjammies. And I hope that this inspires you to feel better and that it helps you to have a better day. And I hope it encourages us all to look at each other with love and not with hate, and not with distrust, and not with fear or anger. That is my hope. So, on that note, have a wonderful day, week, month, and year. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I appreciate every download and every person who has subscribed. I release new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday, so if you enjoy this content, please consider leaving a review. The more reviews fledgling shows like mine receive, the more visible it becomes on the various podcast stations. Each review helps, so if you enjoy what I've been sharing, please help others find this show by leaving a brief review. Thanks again for listening.